You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode, we're reviewing the second test between Sri Lanka and Australia. Just like the first test, it was a complete domination from Australia to win the second test by 9 wickets. Once again, outstanding performances with the bat and with the ball from Smith, Carey, Lyon and Kuhnemann. And for the first time since 2011, Australia have won a test series in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, just like the first test, were disappointing in this second test. Once again, missed opportunities, poor batting and bowling caused them to lose this second test and eventually the series 2-0. And that's a pretty fair reflection on how Sri Lanka played in this second test, as well as in the first test as well. It was pretty poor performance from them, disappointing performance, and they'll be disappointed with their performance across the 2 test matches. And Australia will be very delighted with how they played in the series. Thoroughly deserved their 2-0 series victory. So plenty of things to discuss and talk about in this episode today of the second test. Even though it was another dominant performance by Australia again, but there's still plenty of things to talk about and discuss, and obviously on the Australian side and obviously on the Sri Lankan side as well, to see how the teams went about their business across this second test of the series. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. First of all, let's reacquaint ourselves with how the second test between Sri Lanka and Australia went down in Galle in terms of the scores and how the result became to be that Australia won this second test. Sri Lanka won the toss. They batted first. They made 257 in their first innings. Kusal Mendis top scored with 85 not out. And Kuhnemann and Stark took 3 wickets each for Australia to lead the bowling performance there for Australia. Australia, in response to Sri Lanka's first innings, were bowled out for 414, all thanks to a superb 156 from Alex Carey, and Pradap Jayasuriya took 5 wickets for Sri Lanka to try and get them back into the test match somehow with his 5-wicket haul. Sri Lanka in their second innings were bowled out for 231. Angelo Matthews, the veteran, top scored was 76. And Kuhnemann and Lyon, the spin attack for Australia, took 4 wickets each to bring down Sri Lanka in their second innings. Australia just needed 75 runs to win. They chased down the target with ease, finishing on 1 for 75 from 17.4 overs. Usman Khawaja top scored with 27 not out. And Pradap Jayasuriya took the only wicket for Sri Lanka. Australia won by 9 wickets, and Alex Carey, rightly so, he was named the player of the match for his career best, 156. So that's pretty much how this second test match from Galle panned out in terms of the scores and the performances with bat and ball across the 4 days of this second test from Galle between Sri Lanka and Australia. Now then, what were some of the key moments and key factors from this second test here in Galle between Sri Lanka and Australia? Well, there were a couple of key moments and key factors. Really, Sri Lanka winning the toss was a key moment. Very important for Sri Lanka to win the toss in the second test. Obviously, for them to put a big score on the board and then obviously let their spinners go to work when the pitch was going to break up and deteriorate. This second test, the pitch was a lot different to the first test, a bit drier. It was going to break up and take some turn, which it eventually did, but it wasn't extreme. Everyone predicted that it was going to be a very tough, difficult surface where it would turn big and square and, wickets will fall quickly and it will be probably over in 3 days. That wasn't to be the case. Sri Lanka didn't make most of the opportunity. They were bowled out for 257 after winning the toss, which, wasn't really enough, really. They needed probably around about 350 or something like that to really be in a dominant position. They lost 4 for 57 in the second session on day one, and that's really where the game really turned in Australia's favour. And that's where Sri Lanka relinquished their dominant position. They were 1 for 93 at the start of the innings and then bowled out for 257. That was a key moment. Them winning the toss, but they didn't make the most of it. The other key moment was obviously the Smith and Carey partnership. 259 for the fourth wicket. Pretty much got Australia a first innings lead of 157, which was very handy and very crucial in terms of Australia not wanting to bat again, but they had to bat again in the end because Sri Lanka were able to get a lead of 74 runs. But to be able to put that scoreboard pressure on Sri Lanka was so important. So that was another key moment from this test match. Really, the Smith and Carey partnership really turned the game in Australia's favour, and that's where Sri Lanka were pretty much chasing their tails and pretty much chasing the game from then on in. So those two moments were very crucial in terms of how this test match panned out for the second test here in Galle, and that's why Australia went on to win this test and the series in the end. So a couple of key moments there that really decided the course and the path of the second test from Galle. Now then, let's talk about Sri Lanka and talk about their performance across this second test match with bat and ball, and talk about where did it go wrong for Sri Lanka again. Just like the first test, they were outplayed in the second test again. A 9-wicket defeat in the second test pretty much reflected how poorly Sri Lanka played across the two test matches. They lost the first test by an innings and 242 runs. They've lost this test by 9 wickets. And to lose the series 2-0 is a fair reflection of how Sri Lanka pretty much played across the two test matches in the series. You got to give some credit to Sri Lanka. They did show some fight and resistance, especially in the second innings, where they needed to dig deep with the bat. We saw that fight and resistance from the Sri Lankan team in the second innings, where they needed to try and set Australia a target to chase down in the fourth innings. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. They only set Australia 74 to win, so 75 for Australia to win in the end. That wasn't enough, but they did show some fight and resistance at times. But apart from that, it was pretty much a dominant performance by Australia, and pretty much Sri Lanka could not match them. The batting, yet again, was poor from Sri Lanka. We saw some very poor dismissals on a pitch that was difficult, and it was turning more, as we saw throughout the second test. It was drier, the pitch. The ball was turning, especially the new ball, extra bounce, skidding on, and the ball gripping into the surface. But once the ball got a bit older, it became easier to bat on, as we saw eventually as the test match progressed. But unfortunately for Sri Lanka, they didn't make the most of it. They won the toss, bowled out for 257. That was a big moment. They couldn't capitalize on that key moment of winning the toss and batting first. They were 1 for 93 at the start of the first innings. So they were going along nicely. And then all of a sudden, quickly 5 for 127 and then 6 for 160 and then bowled out for 257. They lost 4 for 57 in the second innings on day one. And that's where Sri Lanka was set back in this test match, really. That was a pivotal moment. Australia put the squeeze on after lunch on day one and took those 4 wickets. Chandamal's innings of 74 and Kusal Mendes' innings of 85 not out. Without those 2 innings, Sri Lanka wouldn't have got 257. At one stage, Sri Lanka was 6 for 150 when Chandamal got out. So Kusal Mendes, batting with the tail, did well to get up to 257 for Sri Lanka. But in the end, it was a below par first inning score in the context of this surface here in Galle. The second innings, they faced a 157-run deficit on the first innings going into the second innings. They needed to bat well and try and set Australia a target to chase that was going to be difficult in the fourth innings, given that the nature of the surface, it was going to break up and take a lot of turn. Unfortunately for Sri Lanka, they didn't do that. Yet again, in trouble in their second innings, 4 for 81. So not a good place to be in. They lost early wickets. The top order failed once again. But then it was Angela Matthews and Kusal Mendes to the rescue. They added 70 for the 6th wicket. And that partnership was looking good and looking like setting Sri Lanka a big second innings lead, I should say. And they were batting comfortably, I should say. Matthews, missed out on the first innings. He, really committed to the second innings to really dig deep. Same with Kusal Mendes, who had a pretty good test match across the board, back-to-back 50s in both innings. So that partnership was looking comfortable and looking like getting Sri Lanka a very good target to set Australia in the fourth innings to make it difficult for them. Unfortunately, as we've seen from Sri Lanka across the whole series, they had a bit of a batting collapse. They lost 3 wickets just before day 3, and they lost the big wicket of Matthews. He had a bit of a brain fade. He tried to play a sweep shot off Nathan Lyon, hit it straight up in the air, and it was a brilliant catch from Bo Webster, who took a bit of a tumble when he was catching that ball, but in the end, he held on to it, and that was the important thing. So Matthews had a brain fade, and that saw Ramesh Mendes get out to Bo Webster from his off spin, and then Pradap Jayasuriya, last ball of day 3, he got out, caught behind off the bowling of Kuhneman, where Steve Smith took a very comfortable catch at slip. And Sri Lanka lost 3 wickets towards the end of day 3, and that's where the game really changed, and that's where Australia started to boss the game, and Sri Lanka had their opportunity to try and set Australia a big target to chase in the last innings. But that's what we've seen from Sri Lanka throughout the whole entire series, is that these key opportunities and key moments, they weren't able to seize them. And this is a prime example of one of them. And, Kusal Mendes batted, with the tail at the start of day 4, and with Kusal Mendes there with the tail, with Peris and Kumara to come, he could have added a few more runs, and Sri Lanka could have got the lead up to probably around about 100, maybe something like that. Give the bowlers something to bowl to. Unfortunately, he fell early, and he got out for 50. Tried to play a pull shot, and he got undone. Got cramped for room off Nathan Lyon. Got a top edge and a good catch from Steve Smith at short fine leg. Once he got out, that was pretty much the end of Sri Lanka, really, in terms of setting a very competitive target for Australia to chase in the fourth innings. He got out, and then Sri Lanka was soon bowled out for 231, and Australia just needed 75 runs to win, which wasn't enough, and Sri Lanka missed their opportunity. So once again, poor batting from Sri Lanka. Chandamal, Angela Matthews, Kusal Mendes were probably the 3 best batters in this test match for Sri Lanka. The others were very disappointing. Nasanka came back for this second test after missing the first test. He was pretty poor. Dimith Kulratne in his final test match wasn't the test match for him to remember, to finish off his 100th and final test match of his career. Kamindu Mendes has been disappointing across the series. Same with Dhananjaya De Silva, and then obviously the tail enders fell away pretty quickly. So Sri Lanka, yet again, their batting wasn't good enough, and they weren't able to seize on key moments with the bat, and they weren't able to make the most of their opportunity, winning the toss and batting first. And when they were bowled out for 257, that pretty much decided that this test match was going to go in Australia's favour. So once again, the batting was poor from Sri Lanka. The bowling side of things was poor again. The spinners lacked consistency, couldn't build pressure. They bowled a lot of good deliveries, the Sri Lankan spinners. But when they bowled a good delivery on the good spot, good line and length, ball after ball, it looked pretty good. It looked threatening. The ball was turning a lot compared to the first test. This second test, the ball was turning a lot, especially with the new ball. And they were getting a lot of purchase out of the surface. But they weren't able to be consistent for long periods of time. And that's been the problem for Sri Lanka across the 2 test matches. Is that the difference between them, the Sri Lankan spinners, and the Australian spinners, is that consistency on a good line and length, building pressure. Sri Lanka weren't able to do that. They bowled a few good deliveries, and then they bowled a poor delivery, a half tracker or a long hop, and they got hit for runs. And that was the difference. They had Australia 3 down for 91 in their first innings, and it was a good opportunity to put Australia under pressure on a spinning track. yet again from Sri Lanka. As we've seen from them throughout the entire series, they weren't able to seize the opportunity. And this was a big opportunity. Alex Carey was promoted up the order because Josh Inglis couldn't bat because of the back spasm. So he had to spend the time off the field, Josh Inglis, before he can come on and bat at his regular spot at number 5. So Australia lost the 3rd wicket. It was Usman Khawaja, and Carey had to come in because the time did not elapse for Josh Inglis to return to the crease. So Carey was promoted. He joined Smith. Australia 3 for 91. The game was in a delicate position at that stage of the match, but they failed to seize the moment, Sri Lanka. Smith and Carey added a big partnership, over 250, and took the test away from Sri Lanka and got Australia a first innings lead of 157. It was poor tactics from the bowlers in that crucial juncture at the time, and Dhananjaya De Silva's captaincy as well. He didn't have pressure. He didn't put a lot of fielders around the bat. He didn't have a short leg. He didn't have a silly point or a back pad on the offside to put pressure on Carey. You know, you do that to the new batter, especially on a pitch that is taking turn and it's very difficult to start on. Sri Lanka did not put the pressure on Carey. They let him get into his innings, and he was able to score a magnificent 100, as well as Smith. And that partnership pretty much was a key opportunity for Sri Lanka to try and get back into this test match, and they didn't seize on it. They blew that opportunity again. They took 7 for 64 on day 3. 7 for 64. They took the new ball. They took 7 for 64. Pradap J. Surya was the leader in that. He took 5 wickets, but it was too late. Where was this when Carey joined Smith at the crease? You know, Pradap J. Surya should have been threatening at that time in the game. The moment was gone. It was too late. It was too late. It was over. 7 for 64. Yeah, good to fight back, but it was too late after Australia gained the lead of 157 on the first innings. Where was this from the spinners from Sri Lanka? Where was this from Pradap J. Surya late in that partnership, when that partnership came in with Carey and Smith and from the other spinners? So Sri Lanka did not do themselves any favours. That was a big moment with the ball. They failed to seize on it. It wasn't a 414-run pitch. And Australia were able to get 414 in 106.4 overs. It was not a 400-run pitch. The tactics from Sri Lanka, the captaincy from De Silva, the bowling did not build any sort of pressure whatsoever for long periods of time. And it was just poor, really. And unfortunately for Sri Lanka, they did not do themselves any favours, unfortunately. And that's why they were in that sort of position. So to finish off about Sri Lanka in this second test of the series, yeah, pretty much poor performance, it had to be said. Poor performance. Once again, poor batting, poor bowling, missed opportunities when they presented themselves. And when looking back on this series, they'll be looking back and saying, you know what, if we took our chances, we took the opportunities, we won the key moments, we batted and bowled a bit better, it could have been a different result, but it wasn't. And that's why they lost the series 2-0, and that's why they lost the second test. So plenty of soul-searching and pondering for Sri Lanka to do going forward in the future in terms of their test cricket as well. They'll definitely reflect a lot from this series against Australia. But yet again, another disappointing performance from Sri Lanka, and they will be very disappointed nonetheless. Now then, let's talk about Australia in terms of their performance across this second test match here in Galle against Sri Lanka. And you have to say it's another dominant performance by Australia again. As we've seen in the first test of the series, the second test of the series was no different. Very dominant performance, outstanding performance from Australia. Good individual performances as well from this second test as well for Australia. You know, obviously Smith and Carey's partnership in hundreds. Kuhnemann, Lyon, Stark were good with the ball yet again. So it was a complete team performance by the Australians, and just shows how well they've dominated in this series. Now, for Australia to lose the toss and to score 414 in their first innings was a great effort on a very difficult surface here in Gore, where the ball was turning a lot more than it did in the first test. They were in trouble early on, 3 for 91, but then Smith and Carey came together, and it was a brilliant partnership at 259 for the fourth wicket, which got Australia to that score of 414 all out, and to gain a lead of 157 on the first innings. They did lose 7 for 64 towards the back end of their innings, where Sri Lanka took those 7 wickets for 64. But they were able to, build that foundation at the start with Smith and Carey in terms of that partnership. So without that partnership, Australia would have been in a lot of trouble. But with that partnership, losing 7 for 64 in the end didn't really matter, because they had that lead of 157 in the first innings, which really put the scoreboard pressure on Sri Lanka, and that really showed when Sri Lanka batted in their second innings. So they needed 75 runs to win. They chased them down with ease. Obviously, Usman Khawaja and Marnus Labuschagne got Australia home. Travis Head did what he did at the top of the order and got Australia off to a good start with a quick fire 20 of 23. And he added 38 runs for the first wicket with Khawaja, which really got Australia off and running in the run chase. So yet again, another good batting performance by Australia, as we've seen across this series. Steve Smith was outstanding again. What can you say about Steve Smith? Back-to-back hundreds in the series, 36 test hundreds to his name now. Probably this innings here in the second test was probably better than the first test, obviously because the pitch was taking a lot more turn than it did in the first test. The second test, this 100 was probably the best of the two in the series. Given the game situation, Australia were 3 for 91, and he needed to stand up with Carey and get a good partnership, and that's what he did. So this was probably the best 100 out of the two for Smith in the series. Yet again, he captained well, 200 catches. He's the fourth equal all-time in terms of most catches by fielder in Test cricket's history, with Jacques Kallis. He's also got 200 catches. Also, the most runs in Asia from an Australian batter, obviously going past many of the greats, like Alan Border and Ricky Ponting in terms of runs tallies for Test runs in Asia. So another great Test match again from Smith. And it just shows that probably Steve Smith is back in business. He had a bit of a lean patch for the last few years. Obviously, the start of the Border Gavaskar Trophy. A lot of people were questioning about whether or not Smith would continue, whether or not he would retire, whether or not he would not score another Test 100 again. But as we saw in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, he scored, 2 centuries in that series, in obviously Brisbane and obviously Melbourne, and then to score 2 here in Sri Lanka and back-to-back Tests. It just shows that Steve Smith is not done, and he wants to go on and really make the most of the latter part of his career. But he was outstanding, superb player of spin. We saw something different from Steve Smith in this second test. He played the reverse sweep, and we don't really see that from Steve Smith. But he decided to bring it out because Alex Carey was playing the reverse sweep at the other end, and Smudge thought, well, you know what? I might as well try something different and add something different to my repertoire of other shots that he has. He didn't play it as well, Steve Smith, the reverse sweep. It doesn't come naturally to him, but he gave it a go, and that's an indication of the great players. The great players like Smith and the other players who've graced the game, who have been very good. They're always looking at ways to get better, trying different things and different strategies and methods, either with the bat or with the ball. And that's what we saw from Steve Smith. So another terrific innings and another good test match from the captaincy point of view of Smith. Let's talk about Alex Carey. And I'm so happy to see Alex Carey finally get the rewards after a lot of hard work. Alex Carey is one of those cricketers that doesn't get the plaudits. He doesn't get the accolades as some of his other teammates like Smith and his fellow South Australian Travis Head. But finally to see Alex Carey score a big century in a very important moment when he joined Steve Smith. He was promoted up the order to number 5. That's where he bats for South Australia domestically, and he's done pretty well there for South Australia over the years. But to finally bat at number 5 for the first time in a test match and to make it 100, and a big one, 156 is his highest ever first class and test score, is a superb achievement from Carey. And, for him to come in, Australia 3 for 91, added the partnership with Smith. I thought, he batted with ease. His strike rate was pretty good throughout the innings as well. And it was just magnificent to see Carey bat in the way he has. He's been probably Australia's informed batters of late. And we've seen that over the last couple of months and maybe a bit more than that from Carey. Just comes in, gets the job done. His keeping's been superb, faultless, you can say. And especially in Sri Lanka and the subcontinent, as a wicketkeeper, keeping up to spin, up to the stumps is a very tough thing to do. So for Carey to do that in Sri Lanka's first innings, which was 97.4 overs, and then to bat for as long as he did, 188 balls for his 156, it's just a testament to his fitness and stamina and endurance. And being a wicketkeeper, that's not an easy thing to do. But he batted superbly. I thought the reverse sweep, the way that Carey used the reverse sweep, he played it so well, and he scored a lot of runs off that in his innings. He's the 4th Australian wicketkeeper to score 150 in a test match. Obviously, Ian Healy, Adam Gilchrist, and Brad Haddon are the others to do that. So that's a great list to be on for Alex Carey. Also, the highest test score by an Australian wicketkeeper in Asia. He goes past Adam Gilchrist's 144 in Kandy, and also the 144 in Fatula, which were against Sri Lanka and Bangladesh for those 2 innings back in 2004 and 2006. Alex Carey goes past that, and that's a great achievement to have on his CV as well. But he deserves all the plaudits, Carey, because we've seen in the past, obviously, he comes in and bats, he makes good 50s, but he doesn't go on and make the 100. Obviously, last year, the run chase in Christchurch, where he made 98 not out, a lot of people were having a go at Pat Cummins because he denied Alex Carey a century. It didn't really bother Carey at the time. He said he was just doing it for the team and got the team home. That's all that mattered. So he would have had 3 test centuries. He's already got one before, and that was against South Africa at the MCG back in 2022, 2023, which was another good knock from Carey. But for him to finally get this century in Asia, especially in Sri Lanka in tough conditions, is probably the highlight of Alex Carey's batting career in terms of his test cricket career. Definitely it is. It's probably, will go down as one of his best innings again in his career. So I thought he batted well. He goes under the radar, Carey, but it's good to see him finally get the rewards for putting in the hard work. And I think this innings from Carey has definitely has told everyone, has reaffirmed everyone that Alex Carey is the number 1 keeper for Australia in Test cricket. He may not be the number 1 keeper in ODIs and T20s, because obviously that's Josh Inglis, who is the preferred limited overs wicketkeeper. But in the Test side, there has been a lot of talk about Carey in terms of him and Inglis, and obviously Inglis scoring 100 on debut in the last Test, and pressure, and people saying Carey's no good, and then we should have Josh Inglis instead. Well, I don't know what those people are thinking. You've been living under a rock. Carey is a bloody good cricketer. To use that word, he's a bloody good cricketer. And he's a handy cricketer. He can bat well. He's a stylish player. All left-handers are. Brilliant cover drives that he plays. He's good against spin, as we've seen in this innings. He's a bloody good wicketkeeper as well. And he's been keeping well in this series as well to Lyon and Kuderman and the other spinners for Australia. So I think this innings has reaffirmed Alex Carey's position as the number 1 wicketkeeper for Australia in the Test side. And it's good to see Carey, batting well and keeping well and obviously doing his job. And he's been doing his job superbly. So fantastic to see Alex Carey batting the way he is and obviously keeping. And it was a brilliant partnership with Smith, which really put Australia in a very strong position in this test match. Just some other batters to talk about before we move on to the bowling performance for Australia. We'll talk about Marnus Labuschagne. He's been under pressure. He missed out in the first innings, and he's had a pretty quiet series up until the second innings, where he scored his top score of 26 not out in the run chase. And I think for Marnus, there's a lot of pressure on Marnus, obviously, and he hasn't performed well for the last few years now. But I think it was important for Marnus to be 26 not out in the run chase. Very important for him to be there at the end with Khawaja. Obviously, as a batter, when you're chasing a low target, there's nothing much to gain. The only thing that you could do is get out, and that's it. So for Marnus, he looked pretty determined to be there at the end. He looked pretty good. He probably looked the best he has been throughout the whole entire series, which is bizarre, but I suppose in the situation of the game and the run chase, Australia were only chasing 75 to win, so there wasn't really much pressure. But for Marnus internally, there is a lot of pressure because of his performances of late. But I think it was very important for Marnus in terms of the confidence and knowing that, I just need to score some runs. And, Marnus is a very quality player, as we know, and cricket careers are not linear. And people that think that cricket careers are linear are wrong. Cricket careers, especially for batters, they go up and down. You have form, slumps and patches where you don't score runs, and it happens to everyone in the game. Cricket is such a hard game to be on top of all the time. If you're only Don Bradman in terms of batting side of things of the game, someone who doesn't really have failures all that often, then you're a freak. But people who are back down to earth and who are not in the class of Don Bradman, you do have form slumps. And Marnus is in that sort of period in his career at the moment. And I think for Marnus, good to see him score some runs, some confidence at least. So hopefully for him, he can, do very well. The other one is Cooper Connolly on test debut. And a lot of scrutiny about Connolly. Let's be honest, it wasn't a great dismissal that he got out to in the first innings. He hit one straight up in the air and got out to Nishan Perez, and it was a good catch from Ramesh Mendes in the end. Connolly, a lot of criticism about his selection because he took the place of Todd Murphy. But I think at the end of the day, the selectors wanted to give him a go. He's 21 years old. Yes, he hasn't played a lot of first-class cricket, but he has something about him. He has some sort of potential that the selectors see in him. So it's only one test match. He didn't bowl a lot. He only bowled 5 overs across the 2 innings. He didn't bat in the second innings, obviously. He only batted in the first innings. He only made 4. So I think for Cooper and for him going forward in Test cricket, just like with Sam Constas, who didn't play in this series, they're young, they've got time on their side. He will be a better cricketer from the experience. And the important thing is just to give him a bit of a taste of what Test cricket's about, make him work harder, make him be motivated to be back in the side again, because I don't think he'll be playing probably in the Caribbean or the World Test Championship final or the Ashes. So it's going to be a long time since we're going to see Cooper Connolly back in the Test side. But when he comes back, he'll probably have a lot of first-class experience under his belt, and seeing that Western Australia domestically in the Sheffield Shield are sort of going down quite badly now in terms of their players getting on a bit, and they're going to do a transition phase. Cooper Connolly will have more opportunities playing for WA domestically in first-class cricket than he has before. So hopefully he could build up that experience and get better. So it's a learning curve for Cooper Connolly, and he's got a bright future ahead. He's only 21. He's still got a lot of time on his side. So that's pretty much Australia's batting performance. Yet again, another dominant performance, superb hundreds from Smith and Carey, good partnership as well. And they were able to get the job done in the run chase, all thanks to Travis Head, Khawaja and Labuschagne. The bowling performance for Australia again was pretty solid. Once again, Australia bowled pretty well in this test match, as they did in the first test. Stark, Lyon and Kuhnemann, the three specialist bowlers, did their job. And that was a lot of pressure on Australia, where they only picked the three specialist bowlers. But to take 20 wickets across both innings of this test match, obviously Bo Webster helped out as well, and Travis Head in the first and second innings. Australia did pretty well with only three specialist bowlers. And it was good that Travis Head and Bo Webster helped out as well to take the load off. But they all bowled well. To bowl Sri Lanka out for 257 after losing the toss was a good result. They took 4 for 57 in the second session on day one, Australia. They really put the screws on Sri Lanka there. They really kept it tight. And Australia were able to take those 4 wickets and bowl Sri Lanka out for 257. They did well in the second innings. They bowled Sri Lanka out for 231, kept them to a 74-run lead after they had a buffer of 157 on the first innings, all thanks to Smith and Carey in that partnership. And they were able to pick up wickets when they needed to. Obviously, the Matthews and Kusal Mendes partnership was looking dangerous. They added 70 for the 6th wicket, but breaking that partnership late on day 3 turned the game in Australia's favour. Sri Lanka lost 3 wickets in a heap. Angela Matthews had a brain fade. Nathan Lyon got him out. Good catch from Bo Webster at deep backward square. Webster came on, bowled his off spin. He got rid of Ramesh Mendes, caught at bat pad on the offside by Travis Head. And then obviously Matt Kuhnemann came on for the last over of the day and got rid of Pradap Jayasuriya, caught at slip by Steve Smith. And Australia were able to fight back after that partnership of Matthews and Mendes was looking pretty dangerous and looking pretty good for Sri Lanka on a surface that when the ball got a bit older, it seemed to be a lot easier to bat on. The ball wasn't really reacting off the surface as much in terms of spin and bounce. But compare that to the new ball, it skidded on, it gripped in the surface, and there was a lot more turn and a lot more something for the spinners to get out of the surface. Lyon and Kuhnemann bowled well, as they have done in the series in tandem. Nathan Lyon took 550 test wickets in this test match. He could have got a fifer in the second innings. He was denied a few times because of umpires' calls for LBWs in that second innings, but I think he'll be happy with 4 wickets. Same with Kuhnemann. He's bowled really well. Mitchell Stark bowled well, in the first innings. The reverse swing, he took 3 wickets. Just shows how good he is in the subcontinent, especially in Sri Lanka. His record is superb. I think he takes his wickets at an average of 16 in Sri Lanka, which is not bad. That's pretty good. He took 2 wickets in back-to-back deliveries. That was Ramesh Mendes and Pradap Jayasuriya in the first innings to really, help Australia bowl Sri Lanka out in that first innings. Bo Webster, as I mentioned before, his off-spin paid off. He got rid of Mendes, Ramesh Mendes and Kumara in the second innings. And it was a pretty good team performance by Australia in terms of the bowling side of things. They really dominated yet again, as they have done in the series. And it was a pretty good bowling performance from the Australians. And they should be proud of their efforts in terms of how they went about their business with the ball in this test match, but also in the series in general as well. So pretty good performance from Australia. To finish off about Australia, dominant performance with bat and with the ball, good fielding as well. We saw some good catches from time to time. And it was a pretty good performance by the Australians again, as it has been throughout the whole entire series. They've been dominant, and Sri Lanka weren't up to the task, really, and that really showed across the 2 test matches of this series. So no doubt Australia will be very pleased with their performance in the second test, but they will also be pleased about their performance across the series as well. Some concluding thoughts just to end review of the second test between Sri Lanka and Australia. Some of my concluding thoughts from the test match that I picked up on. Australia's performance in this first test wasn't a fluke, and they backed it up with another dominant performance in the second test, which has led to Australia winning their first test series in Sri Lanka since 2011. Sri Lanka never recovered from the first test defeat, and it showed in the second test. Sri Lanka haven't helped themselves. Missed opportunities, poor batting and bowling cost them dearly. And that's why they lost this test match and the series 2-0. And they'll be very disappointed by that, Sri Lanka. As we've talked about throughout this episode today, they'll be very disappointed. It was a below par performance. Australia were the dominant team, as you would expect. And it just shows where the two teams are at in terms of their test cricket. Australia in the best probably era, probably the best group of players they've had for a very long time that are just winning everything. And Sri Lanka going through a transition phase. Obviously, Dimuth Kuraratne retiring from this second test, playing his 100th and last test for Sri Lanka. And then you will probably think Angela Matthews will probably retire as well. So Sri Lanka are going to go through some tough times and periods in the next few years in terms of their transition of their test side. But another dominant performance by Australia and another poor performance from Sri Lanka. And hopefully for Sri Lanka, they can learn a lot from this test series against Australia. And hopefully that will help them going forward in terms of getting better and improving as a test side. For Australia, probably one of their most dominant performances in the subcontinent for some time. And I think that's a fair observation and summation to make. Thanks, everyone, for listening to our second test review between Sri Lanka and Australia. If you're watching or listening to this episode of the podcast on our YouTube channel, let us know your thoughts on this second test between Sri Lanka and Australia in the comments. We would love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.